Good day, ladies and gentlemen. It's 9:45 a.m. here, and I'm sure it is quite late in several other parts of the world. I see colleagues from India, Australia, and Africa, and many other places. My name is Chandra Govindrajulu. I'm a lead energy specialist at the Energy Sector Management Assistance Program. I'm pleased to welcome you all to today's meeting, today's exciting seminar is jointly organized with the India Smart Grid Forum. I'm especially delighted to welcome our esteemed speakers from the Powerledger, since it is a note that they're connecting from Australia, the India Smart Grid Forum, CESC, which is the utility operating in West Bengal, India, and the Uttar Pradesh Energy Regulatory Commission. I also equally welcome my colleagues, Deb and Katharina, who will be bringing their insights from our client engagements in different regions on this interesting topic. We'll be sharing today lessons learned from the recently completed pilots of blockchain-based peer-to-peer trading of distributed renewable energy in 3 states in India. These lessons can help inform other client countries of the World Bank on how to design and implement innovative pilots and spur uptake of distributed renewable energy. Distributed energy resources located behind the consumer meter, such as PV, energy storage, and electric vehicles are increasingly widespread, as we all know. And these also can become increasingly even further widespread if we use data, digital technologies, and then help countries meet their decarbonization needs and goals rather. And with the falling cost of renewable energy, storage, and digital technologies, DRE can play an important role in this regard. We'll be discussing some practical learnings today from real-world projects in a developing country. I am aware of some examples in other countries as well. It will have a significant, I hope we have a significant consequence for power sectors, power utilities around the world. With the traditional power flowing in power systems, power flowing in one direction from the centralized power generator to the consumer, will now have they are starting to manage bi-directional flows. And then with that, we also have new service delivery models, new market segments, and participants will also impact the role of the utility and changing market structures. Regulatory framework also need to be adapting themselves for such a fundamental shift. So with such a transformation impacting an otherwise traditional business, there is also need to bring a wide set of stakeholders. Any change of this nature will face some resistance. As also in the case of the US, there was some resistance in the deployment of rooftop solar in some of the states. The utilities, not so happy in some cases. It'll be interesting to learn how these sorts of issues have been addressed in the context of these pilots. Before I hand over to Kabir, I just want to note that this webinar is being undertaken under our new program called Utilities for the Energy Transition. This program at ESMAP is aimed at supporting World Bank client utilities in their adoption of digital technologies and innovative business models to facilitate improved access to clean, modern, affordable, and reliable electricity. I am really looking forward to the discussion today. With that, let me hand over to Kabir. Kabir, over to you, and I look forward to an interesting discussion. Thank you.
Thanks, Chandra. Thanks for those words. So my name is Kabir Malik. I'm a senior energy economist in ESMAP with the World Bank. So we have a great panel today and a packed agenda, and I'm also glad to see so many of our colleagues join. I'm looking forward to an engaging discussion. I want to quickly mention a couple of things. One, we will have time for Q&A at the end of the session, but please feel free to add any questions in the chat, and we can ask them at the end of the session, or you can hold your questions and ask them yourself at the end. Also, since we started 15 minutes late, since the infrastructure town hall was extended, we will also end 15 minutes later at 11:15 a.m. DC time. So I hope you can stay on and have enough time in the end for the Q&A session. So without further ado, let me get straight to welcoming our first speaker. We will kick off with Dr. Gemma Green, the co-founder and chairman of Powerledger, a tech company founded in 2016 that uses blockchain for energy and environmental commodity trading. Powerledger currently has P2P trading projects in many parts of the world, including India, Australia, and Thailand, to help increase grid resilience and flexibility. Gemma, the virtual floor is yours.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the invitation to speak.
Gemma, we can't hear you.
Gemma, you there? We can't hear you.
She's here, sir. She's here.
You going to project her slides or she will project?
I can do that, but
Yeah, you project the slides and let her speak in audio only if she has a network issue.
Thank you. What a moment for my internet to drop out. Thank you so much for speak today. The slides, Shashi.
No, full screen.
I'm just going to give you an overview. Can you hear me okay?
Could be better,
Yes,
but
Gemma.
yeah, just hear you.
It's a bit choppy, but I mean, let's go ahead.
Shashi will share the slides and you can speak. Maybe you can switch off the camera also in case of network issues. Yeah, go full screen.
Okay, no
Shashi.
problem.
Yeah, here you are.
Thank you. Just bear with me one moment. Thank you. I'm just trying to turn on my 5G, but I am struggling to find it right this second. We'll see how I go without it. I hope you can hear me now. Thanks,
yeah, we can hear you.
Great. Could you turn the slide to the next slide, Shashi? Thank you. I'm going to speak about the time problem and the place problem, and both are needed to get to 24/7 renewable energy. And my esteemed colleagues are going to speak more about the Indian market and also some of the projects that Powerledger has done in India. But I was going to just give a more global context to set the scene about why India is looking at the things that it's looking at, taking account of the issues that have been seen in other parts of the world. Shashi, if you would mind turning to the next slide. So that the place problem or the space problem is really characterized by building a lot of renewable generation assets far away from load centers. And so transmission lines need to be built, which cost a lot of money. This is a German illustration. Not to pick on Germany, this is a situation that you can see in many parts of the world. And most of the generation assets are in the northern part of the country, whereas the consumption, the people, are in the southern part. And then this particular project here, Suede Link, is costing more than 11 billion euros and is way over budget and over time. And that's just one illustrative example of the place problem. Shashi, if you could turn to the next slide. And then the time problem is from variable renewable energy. So rooftop solar generating when the sun's shining, or wind generating when the wind is blowing, and it's a mismatch against when the energy is being consumed. And this is known as the time problem. And if you add up the kind of costs of dealing with the time problem and the costs of dealing with the place problem, you can see what that looks like in aggregate, where you create price signals that grow renewables that don't take account of these two considerations. Shashi, could you turn to the next slide, please? And this is a very interesting graph. It shows the price of electricity corresponding to the penetration of variable renewable energy around the world. And all of this has been stimulated by feed-in tariffs, which is effectively a blunt price signal to build energy fairly indiscriminately in terms of time and place. And you can see a very strong positive correlation between high cost of electricity and high penetration of variable renewable energy. Australia, where I'm from, is definitely a part of that. Germany, Netherlands, Denmark, the most pronounced examples. And it's not solely because of the subsidy, the feed-in tariff, which gets pushed through to the cost. It's also the additional costs that the system incurs from having electricity be far from load centres and not generated at times of day when it's needed. And you can see that very clearly by the next slide. Firstly, to set the scene, in the past 10 years, more than $300 billion each year has been spent on renewables, and that's what you can see in yellow on the graph here. So there's a lot of money being spent on renewables. And there is somewhat of a fixation on looking at the levelized cost of electricity, which is just the generation costs. And people saying, like, solar is now cheaper than gas, or wind is now cheaper than coal, really only looking at the levelized cost, not the total cost of electricity. Shashi, could you turn to the next slide? If you look on the very far left-hand part of the graph, you can see distribution costs and transmission costs spend over the past several years is commensurately high, correlated with the spend on solar and wind. So you can see here the additional cost that the system is having to take account of because of feed-in tariffs and indiscriminate growth of solar and wind far from load centres, not at times of the day when it's needed. So this is a kind of summary of the manner, like, what happens, in grids where you grow renewable energy with very blunt price signals, I would say. Please move to the next slide. And Powerledger created its platform, which is a software platform to allow for trading of renewable energy in a peer-to-peer sense to encourage the growth of renewables near to where there are consumers. And we believe the grid is only as good as the market that sits behind it. And the basic premise is that the market mechanisms are working in harmony with balancing supply and demand on the grid and encouraging co-location of generation nearer to consumption. Shashi, if you could turn to the next slide. And as I said, my esteemed colleague Reggie will be speaking, and also RP Singh will be speaking about some of the India projects. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of an oversight into what is happening outside of India to set the scene. So this is a project in France, working with the 4th largest electricity supplier there. And it's a product we've developed with them called Choose Your Mix. So customers can specify, I want 10% solar from this particular solar farm or 15% wind from a particular wind farm. And what we do is we measure the output of the solar farm or the wind farm against the load profile of the customer, and we match that together and record that on the blockchain. And so the customers can say, I know I'm getting my electricity from a particular source, and they can support their local energy projects as well. If you turn the slide, Shashi, in Austria, we have launched a product with Energy Steiermark, which is one of the larger energy suppliers there. They have about 600,000 customers. And this is all around peer-to-peer sharing of energy or local energy markets. And so households and businesses are able to trade their surplus solar, and customers that don't have solar can buy that from others. And this just commercially launched this year after extensive testing prior. And then turning now to the next slide to go through an example in Thailand, which was actually our first project in Asia in 2018, and it's the largest commercial peer-to-peer trading project in the world. It involves a number of buildings, schools, hospitals, shopping centres, apartment buildings, that some of which have solar, some don't. And they trade their surplus solar energy with each other as a kind of a secondary trading market for surplus PPAs. So each building has an offtake agreement with the rooftop solar. And if they don't consume all of it, they can trade the surplus with other buildings within the precincts. And there's 2 precincts, T77 and O77. And this project has been expanding, adding more buildings into it, and has been extended to the end of 2025. So in terms of some of the use cases, tracking each kilowatt of energy in terms of time and place and type allows you to create marketplaces with more dynamic price signals that balance supply and demand and result in electricity being more likely to be consumed locally and less likely to cause congestion or have to be exported long distances. And these price signals can also encourage batteries to be put into the system because it provides an extra use case for them, another income layer that can reduce the payback time on a battery. This might be a secondary or tertiary use case for the battery. And citizens that don't have renewable energy are able to access it. And those citizens and businesses that have large roof spaces that perhaps would not otherwise put solar on because they couldn't sell it to anyone, or the feed-in tariff only allows you to size it to a certain size, can put more rooftop solar in and sell the surplus to their neighbours. So this provides a market signal that encourages more renewable energy to be put into the grid, and the prices can be adjusted dynamically based on available supply and demand or other parameters that the network might like to set, so that the marketplace can actually support the network in balancing supply and demand on the grid. And Shashi, would you mind turning to the next slide? So I just want to spend a moment talking about blockchains, and Reggie has got a lot more information as well on this. But the first kind of iteration of a blockchain would be Bitcoin. And this was like, it's just it just keeps records. It doesn't have any smart functionality in it. It's used as a currency essentially. And we would call that a generation one blockchain. And Gen 2 blockchains was the advent of smart contracts where certain functions can be programmed into the tokens, so that counterparties can trade without intermediaries, which can drive efficiencies in processes. And Ethereum was the first blockchain that did that. And it's been amazing in terms of the amount of experimentation that's happened in that ecosystem. Thousands of projects in different sectors, including energy, carbon, sustainability. There's a lot happening there, but it suffers from performance. It can only process 15 transactions per second. And what's planned to upgrade that to be able to have more throughput is effectively connecting other blockchains to the Ethereum blockchain, and it won't necessarily get that much faster, maybe 100 transactions per second. And with it comes other challenges. For example, you have issues of latency when you have two blockchains talking to each other. You have issues of security. You have the cost of recording things on two blockchains. So it's a suboptimal situation. And Gen 3 blockchains are blockchains that have more performance, more throughput, more transactions per second they can ingest. And there's quite a diverse landscape in performance, which we'll show you in a moment. And you're starting to see applications being built directly on the blockchain in blockchain coding languages. So they're what's called dApps, or distributed applications. So rather than having a traditional application be built with traditional software like Java or Python and then talk to the blockchain to record information, you can actually have the code for the application sit on the blockchain and be part of the blockchain itself, and that's called a dApp. And these can be written very fast with a lot less code and be much more secure and scalable as well. So we're starting to see a lot of dApps emerge as a result of having Gen 3 blockchains, which can have more throughput than the Gen 2 forefathers. So
We can't hear you.
able to turn, thank you. So I mentioned Gen 1, Gen 2, Gen 3. Gen 2 is Ethereum, which you can see on the left. And then the early Gen 3 blockchains, Cardano, which can process 250 transactions per second, which is a lot more than Ethereum, and Avalanche, 4,500, Polkadot, 1,000, Algorand, 1,100. So it's significant improvements. But if you look at Solana, what it can process is 50,000 transactions per second. And why I point this out is a fewfold. One is the innovation with Solana compared to the other blockchains is that the other blockchains process one block. When that finishes, it processes the next block. So each block is one after the other. Whereas Solana processes the blocks in parallel, and that's how it's able to get that much performance, which can even be increased. with hardware and bandwidth improvements. And I
Slide.
think this is quite. Sorry.
Shashi, move to the next slide. Oh no, yeah, this is what you're talking.
Yes, thank you. This is very significant because you can actually get a lot more throughput without actually adding other blockchains to the main blockchain to get the speed. And it was for this reason that we started actually, since Powerledger was created, we've actually tested 4 blockchains. We did a fork of Bitcoin. We moved to Ethereum. Then we did some testing on Quorum. And in May of 2022, we left Ethereum and we took a clone of the Solana blockchain and we made the Powerledger blockchain, which is the code from the Solana open source blockchain. And we adapted it further for the electricity use case and tested it. Why we like it and why we're using it is because it's very energy efficient, super energy efficient. It's super low cost, and also it's got the performance. And you can see here how one transaction uses a very small amount of energy, which I think is extremely important if you're going to use a blockchain for an electricity use case. It has to be energy efficient. So you can see some comparisons here of how much energy Solana uses compared to other use cases like a Google search or an LED light bulb. It's very, very small, and certainly compared to Bitcoin. And so in May last year, we moved, and in August of this year, we made our blockchain public. And why did we do that? Well, it was important for some of our clients, like Shell, for example, that our blockchain was open source and public. And we have our own software, which we use, but other companies that have software for the energy sector may want to add a blockchain element to their offering and could use this blockchain, which is really fit for purpose for electricity. So in summary, it's fast, efficient, energy efficient, and low cost. So thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to being part of the debate today. Thank you.
Thanks, Shema. Very clear presentation. Thanks for that. Next, we will have a presentation by Mr. Reji Kumar Pillai, the president of the India Smart Grid Forum. The ISGF is a globally recognized think tank and was established as a public-private partnership initiative of the government of India in 2011 and is spearheading the mission to accelerate grid modernization and energy transition in India. Mr. Pillai is also serving as the chairman of the Global Smart Energy Federation. Reji, welcome.
Shashi, you have my latest slide. Please present. I'll tell you to move it.
Sure, sir. I'll do that. Just give me one.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all the participants from around the world. It's indeed a pleasure to run this webinar with the people participating from around the globe. And we hope this will be useful, and we'll soon see ESMA projects centered around the blockchain technology. Recently in July, we launched 2 white papers, one with Powerledger along with under those aegis of Global Smart Energy Federation, which is a very futuristic applications. It looks at how the power sector is going to change from the centralized to the distributed, and in that regime, how new applications require new technologies to make it faster, scalable. And many of the projects which I am going to talk about, Shashi, the slides are gone. The pilot projects which you have executed has limited number of people. Those kind of transactions you can do on paper and pen, or when you have hundreds or thousands, you can still do in an Excel sheet. But when there are millions of people, selling and buying electricity from millions of people, you need new technologies, new platforms like blockchain. So please go full screen and to the next slide. Gemma has already explained about the generation 1, generation 2, generation 3 blockchains. Shashi, next slide, and you go full screen. Projection mode. Why? When you do that, it's disappearing.
Just give me a moment, sir.
So since we are running a bit late, I will one speak faster. Number two, skip some of the slides which already many of you know about it. So these are there for the sake of the somebody who is going through the slide to have complete understanding. As I said, when I speak faster, it may not sound English. Whenever it becomes like that, you have difficulty in following. Tell me to go slow. So what is a blockchain? You know, what are the what it consists of. It's a transaction request. There is a peer-to-peer transaction, consensus mechanism, encrypted algorithms. All this, go back. Yeah. All these things it consists of, and what are the key characteristics? Basically, the trust which bring in the entire process is the key thing. Go again by line item by line. Slide, please. There is some problem. She's not able to put it on the projection mode. Yeah, here we public blockchain, private blockchain, consortium blockchain, hybrid blockchain, and Gemma has already explained about the generation 1, 2, 3, and what are the advantages of the true Gen 3 blockchains, which can do 500,000 plus transactions per second. Next one, how it work. Yeah, without a projection mode, it doesn't explain much. Yeah, someone requests for a transaction, and it transmitted to all the nodes in the network, and majority of them approves it, and a node is created with a hashtag and created to the block. So, and nobody else can change it thereafter. Come to the next one. Power sector and blockchain applications are there in every section of the economy, and in power sector also it has attracted the attention, and today there are more than 24 different applications of blockchain in the energy sector. So some of the most important ones, about 12 of them under this 8 headings I have listed here. Again, since we don't have time, won't go through the details of it. The most prominent among this are the green energy certification, or the RECs, or renewable energy certificates, or green energy certificates, and of green electricity for generation of green hydrogen. So that's a fast growing area, and peer-to-peer trading of green electricity. These are the 2 applications which have maximum implementations. Next slide, please. Next one. Yeah. So a vision for the future, as Gemma has explained, and I already mentioned, this technology enabled creation of local energy markets where communities can generate, store, and trade clean energy locally. The local energy markets can help integrate locally generated renewable energy to the grid, reducing emission, increasing energy security, and avoid transmission capacity and generation capacity augmentation in the main grid, and bringing electricity from faraway locations. So consumers have better control on their energy usage and consumption, and it fosters innovation and competition. It drives down cost, increase efficiency, and also create new opportunities for local businesses and entrepreneurs, stimulating economic growth and job creation. So empowering communities to take control of their energy future. Next slide, please. We have done 3 pilot projects in India and in 3 different states. And these are all done under the regulatory sandbox approach, where a regulator accord approval to undertake a experiment or a pilot project, and based on the results of the project, permanent regulations are framed. So all these projects, there was no money transaction. People, we onboarded, identified, selected, trained, and onboarded the participants who with engaged in the trading, and end of the month we were giving a shadow bill. There was actually no money transaction. So now that there's a regulation in UP, the utilities in UP are looking at scaling up this. Next slide, please. I'll first talk about the UP project, which was given to us just before the first wave of the pandemic in 2020. The project was awarded to us as in March 2020, and after 2 weeks the lockdown came. We couldn't do anything. Much later in August, with great difficulty, we've been able to recruit 12 participants. 9 of them are prosumers with rooftop solar, and 3 of them were net buyers. So we couldn't get more people because of the COVID. Nobody wanted to meet anybody. And at this point in time in UPPCL, in the utility which is in Lucknow, there was already a smart metering program under implementation. It was not commissioned properly. So we decided to install ISGF on smart meter. Means we bought from a small company and we installed the cellular SIM cards in it, and this company's head-end system, the metering data, it has gone to the head-end system, which we integrated with the blockchain platform of Powerledger, and which after the trading results are aggregated, we integrated back to the UPPCL billing system. For this, again, we didn't want to disturb their production system. So UPPCL uses Oracle CCNB billing system. We installed a new instance of the billing system on the cloud, and we taken the profile of these 12 participants and we installed in that new instance. So the trading results from the blockchain platform integrated with the new instance of the billing system, and we generated shadow bills at the end of it. So new smart meters were installed in series with the existing revenue meter of the utility. This is something which we had done for the first. This project went live in 2020 December, and we ran it for about next slide please, 4-5 months, and then given our recommendation to UPPCL and UP Electricity Regulatory Commission. So this is a trading results, some numbers, how many people bought from the grid versus how much they have bought and sold on the P2P platform. And the rupee value is also mentioned here. Nothing great, but what it says is that people actually done it. And in initial days, people were enthusiastic. They used to bid a price, and they used to, buyers and sellers used to bid a price. After some time, they realized these are all small money, $1, $2 per day. They didn't want to waste time. The market discovered a price of somewhere around 5 rupees 60 paise, which is in the midpoint of in the net metering policy in Uttar Pradesh. The surplus electricity which you sell it back to the grid, you get only 2 rupees. Whereas buying from the grid is about 9 rupees to 10 rupees, which is more than 10 cents. Whereas you get much less if you surrender to the grid. So the buyers and sellers, both of them found a win-win formula somewhere around 5.6 rupees, and there was no network fee or anything for in the pilot project we provisioned for the utility. Next one, the different next slide please. The different trading logics which we applied was described here. Buyer's price, where buyer asks for a price, and seller's price, people agreeing to buy at the seller's price, average price with the platform do it, and also according to the volumetric weighted average. So this is something what we tried. After a month, people didn't have interest in it. They all found that 5 rupees 60 paise is a win-win, and most of the trade in the following months happened on that. Next slide please. So Honorable UP Electricity Regulatory Commission, in the very first year after we submitted the results of the project, they in the tariff order which was issued in the middle of 2021, they have indicated that this is a successful project. This may be made available to all the customers in UP. But nothing much happened with the utility at that point in time. And the next year, 2022 tariff order issued by the commission, which Mr. R.P. Singh will talk about it later, they have advised the utility to, it was an instruction order to the utility to scale up the P2P platform and make this available to all the customers in the state. And accordingly, UPPCL, they filed a petition with the UPERC, and based on which permanent regulations have been issued by UPERC, one of the first such regulations anywhere in the world, with complete clarity. Next slide, please. It talks about what they have done. A service provider may be empaneled, and service provider will give this facility, and this talks about what the commission has done. You can go to the next one. The full regulation can be downloaded from the link which is given here. The next one, please. So yeah, here 92 paise wheeling charges per kilowatt hour has been previous slide. A provision for the 92 paise to be paid by the buyer has been provisioned by the in the regulations for the wheeling charge for the utility, and there is no cross subsidy or anything. And also a service provider, blockchain platform service provider, a fee of no upfront charges or anything, but a fee of 42 paise per kilowatt hour to be equally divided between the seller and the buyer. And the regulations are completely salient point of the regulations are given in my backup slides, and also Mrs. RP Singh will be talking about it later. People can ask your questions on this there. Come to the next project we have done was a much bigger project. In 2021, it went live with Tata Power Delhi distribution, and we had 117 participants here, and we had 55 prosumers and we had 62 consumers. Some of them were Tata Power's own buildings, some of their own offices and substations as prosumers. Some of them were real customers who participate in that. Here, under the net metering in Delhi, the surplus energy is surrendered to the grid. It gets somewhere around 6 rupees, 5 rupee 80 paise or 6 rupee, close to that, much more than UP. So the spread is much less here, and the commercial customers pay close to 10 rupees. So the spread is only 4 rupees, whereas in the case of UP, it was about 7-8 rupees. So the unique features of this project was that we have introduced an electric vehicle and also a trader, an aggregator who do the trading on behalf of the customers. So this was some of the interesting features which we have done. And also we didn't install any new meter. The Tata Power has their own meter, Tata Power's own smart meters. From their meter data management system, this 117 participants, their data was integrated with the blockchain platform, and which the trading results were integrated back to Tata Power's SAP billing system. So in UP we had Oracle billing system. Here it's SAP billing system. Both we worked. And more. Next slide, please. This talks about the volumes. This pilot, again, by the time it went live, the second and the more dreaded wave of COVID came. Nothing much could be done during the mid period from April, May, June, July. So again, September, October, November, we kept it till November, and thereafter, end of November, we submitted the recommendations to Honorable Delhi Electricity Regulatory Commission. They have also issued the trading volumes, and the numbers are given here, how many units which has been traded. Come to the next slide. Yeah, this is a draft regulation issued by Delhi Electricity Regulatory Commission in 2023 June, and inviting public comments, and the last date for giving comments were end of June, and they issued it as a very simple version, as an amendment to their existing net metering policy, permitting peer-to-peer transactions on blockchain platform, defined what is blockchain and all that. So it's a 2-3 page regulation. We expect the final version to be published anytime soon. And come to the third project which we have done in Kolkata, was much bigger. It had 1,001 participants, and here most of the activities were done with the CESC, and the customers who participated here are mostly C&I customers, and a total about 8 megawatt of rooftop solar was part of this. And this project went live in August 2022. And this was done without the direct involvement of the customers, because 2 reasons. One, the other 2 places we have taken the regulator into confidence, and there was a regulatory order for that. In this case, we wanted to do this trial and then submit to the regulator, because there was a leadership change in the regulatory commission, etc. at that point in time. So, and also this 1,001 customers who participated here, they don't have smart meter, they have AMR meter. Every day and night, the previous day's meter reading is downloaded by CESC, and the next day morning they make it available to us. So we do the aggregation on an XML file, which we do the aggregation on the blockchain platform. So real-time trading was not possible without a smart meter. So that is another reason. Here there are some very interesting lessons learned from here. The next slide, please. Next slide talks about the results. Here we looked at how much saving. Currently, there is gross metering and also, sorry, net metering. And what are the these are calculation based on actual meter data, estimated rates without the direct involvement of the customers, and the positive value is the saving for the participants. And we tried different months, different trading rules. The fixed price P2P, which is a fixed price between the buyer and seller, they agree what price they will do the transaction. And a preferential price is some people like to buy from a preferred customer, preferred prosumer. I am a buyer, I want to buy from a X prosumer. So at a rate which we mutually agreed. And a dynamic price is something which the platform takes adjusts it according to the ask and the sell of the people. And the stacked is it involved multiple trading models to achieve additional or benefits. Next slide, please. So here, what are the main benefits? So CSE found that P2P trading is better than feed-in tariff, offering higher prices to prosumers. Feed-in tariff typically is less, and in case of P2P, it can be somewhere between the commercial rate of commercial tariff and feed-in tariff. It's somewhere in between, and some customers pay less with P2P than their grid tariff, which is commercial rate. It is more than that. And some customers are willing to pay more for the green electricity, higher than their the regulated tariff. And utilities can save when prosumers switch from net metering to P2P trading. So we have telescopic rate in India in all the utilities, all the states. So a customer is using 1,000 units of electricity, is a prosumer, he generates 200 units in a month. That the highest rate, which is say 10 rupees per kilowatt hour, the 200 units goes out. That is something which the utility cannot get under a net metering regime. But if that person sell that to net metering under P2P platform, sell it to some other buyers, then it is advantageous to the utility. That's what they have seen. So dynamic trading pairs buyers and sellers effectively on the platform. So next one, please. Yeah, so this is offers benefit to prosumers. We have seen that P2P offers benefit to prosumers, consumers, utility, and even those are on the feed-in tariff. It included P2P traded on the platform is included in the RPO. We argued for including that into the RPO of the utility. That's a downstream procurement of solar energy from distributed prosumers rather than upstream PPA with RE producers. That is again advantageous to the utility. So again, the retail tariff has two parts. One is a fixed tariff, and another one is which is the demand charges. Another one is the energy charges. If the tariff is engineered properly, the energy sales, even if the utility doesn't do, they will still be able to maintain the system. There will be no losses to the utility. As in the case of the UP regulation, if a 92 paise or 1 rupee per kilowatt hour is given to the utility for billing charges, that's a new revenue model for them. And this will transform the utility into distribution network operators. It's a beginning of that. So it empowers customers. And the main leading is that when P2P regulations are prepared, it has to be the greater good of all need to be considered. Next slide, please. Yeah, this is a comparison of the 3 projects which we have done. Each of them was a different experience. As I said, in UP, we installed new smart meters in series with the existing revenue meters, and we have taken the metering data from the new smart meter headend to the blockchain platform, and blockchain platform installed into a new instance of the billing system where this 12 customers profile were ported. And in TPDDL in Delhi, there were more people, 117 people. There we leverage the existing smart metering system of Tata Power, and we have integrated the blockchain with their billing system using the APIs, client APIs of Powerledger into an SAP billing system. And the third one, as I just explained, it is an AMR data which downloaded by CSE, given to us the following day. We used it on the blockchain platform for aggregating the trading results and given back to CSE for their homegrown billing system. So 3 different billing systems we have done. Project period Some of them run for longer period in time. Some of them run for smaller period in time. And in case of project cost, what we have done with TPDDL and CESC are confidential, whereas about 5 million rupees was given by it's about $60,000. This is what is given by UP ERC approved, which is given to us by UPPCL. So here total RTPV capacity was about 100 kilowatt, little less than 100 kilowatt. The other one, Tata Power, was 5 megawatt, and in CSC it was 8 megawatt and about 213.
Hello, how are you? No, not really.
Next one, please. And I'm almost towards the end. For designing pilots, it is not just for P2P pilot, for any demonstration project design. Some of the thumb rules are that we should not disturb the ongoing day-to-day activities of the utility and their revenue management cycle. So maintain absolute clarity in defining the objectives and functionalities of the project, and that should be communicated to all the stakeholders to get their buy-in. And we should ideally obtain regulatory approvals or keep the regulators informed of the pilot projects, and undertake a as-is study to assess the existing infrastructure, both hardware and software in the utility, and identify interfaces for the pilot project that wouldn't cause constraint on their day-to-day operations. And also understand what is the fund available for undertaking a demonstration project. Accordingly, choose the size and functionalities of the demonstration project, which can be managed within the available fund, and then go for the architecture of the pilot project based on the as-is study, the key functionality selected, and the project size, and prepare a list of new items, hardware, software, etc., to be procured, and what can be leveraged, and have the procurement plan, prepare the project timelines, and document the project results, and share with all the regulators and other stakeholders. Next slide, that I believe will be the last one. I won't go through the details of it. This is just for implementation of P2P energy trading in developing countries, how to choose and what are the implementing in the project beneficial to all people, regulatory approval, meter and billing system. This has to be there. Smart metering ideally should be there for a successful project. And the trading and settlement agency, there has to be somebody. Ideally, the utility should take the responsibility for collecting the money from everybody, the buyers, and giving to the producers or the prosumers. And in UP regulation is very clear. It has to be done by the utility. And a blockchain service provider to be enrolled for the program. How we will use them? Is it going to be an OPEX model, or it will be a CAPEX plus AMC? And will the utility or the agency running it, they will be able to manage the blockchain? So we found that our utilities don't have the capability to manage this. So we suggested a services model against a X paise per kilowatt hour traded on the platform. And we will maintain the platform for whatever 3 years, 5 years, something like that. Project participants onboarding and training, we should train them, and also explore creation of local clean energy communities, and so that somebody should come in and invest in the energy storage systems, so that these communities can be independent of the grid, at least in peak hours or a longer period whenever there is no reliability available. So next slide. I think this is the last one, and there are so many slides which I have given. Just go to the next one, backup slides. This is only for reference. I won't go through it. UPRC guidelines are all there. Go back to the previous one, and also talking about the consensus mechanism. Different. You heard Gemma talking about previous slide. Yeah, you heard Gemma talking about proof of stake, proof of work, etc. The different consensus mechanisms used in blockchains is explained briefly, and also different programming languages are there. That's also what are the pros and cons of these languages are in the backup slides. I go back to the previous slide and I stop here. Thank you very much. I guess still we are late. I couldn't finish in 15 minutes. Kabir, back to you.
Thanks. Yes, no, thanks for trying to make up time. It's very sort of rich material and dense slides, and as you said, I think we'll have the slides available afterwards. Without further ado, let's go to our next presenter. We have Mr. Debashish Banerjee, the Managing Director, Distribution of CESC Limited. CSC serves about 15 million people spread over its licensed area in the twin cities of Kolkata and Howrah in the state of West Bengal, India. During his tenure, Mr. Banerjee has ushered a transformation journey for CSC towards greater operational excellence and resilience, the transformation of CSC into a more agile, customer-centric, and efficient digital utility. Devashish, you're welcome. We're running a little bit behind.
Shashi, these slides later, not now. Oh, Barbara, these slides after.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
We are running a little late, so if you could keep your comments brief, and then we'll have time during Q&A to come back to any points you want to raise. Thank you so much.
Good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure to be, on such a large platform on a very emerging technology. Actually, for us, we were evaluating the use of blockchain applications. For a utility, what matters is that whenever there are peaks, those peaks last for few days and few hours of the year, but then we have to meet the demand, and for that we need to spend capex on the distribution infrastructure as well as the import transmission infrastructure. But so what we feel as a utility, the best ROI would be when there is a distributed generation or an embedded generation within the service area. So hence, the best thing to understand is how we can use a technology to ensure that the consumer actually goes to transitions to clean energy. But we must all remember that while he transitions to clean energy, there is in this energy transition, the important part is the energy security and the energy affordability. So these three things go together for energy. And a blockchain as a project, when we use a consumer, like we have used here for 1,000 meters, we have used about 700 odd numbers, 787 numbers as a consumer and prosumer who have already got solar PV rooftops. And we found that how does the utility ensure that is more proliferation of the renewable energy or distribution resources. That can happen only when the utility does not lose its fixed charges. Because what happens, the utility for us, like we have a captive generation, so we have a generating unit, and for that we have a fixed charge, and we also have the distribution network for the fixed charge. So for us, net metering does not, as a utility, subtracts our revenue. So it's not good for us. But when we want to see on the consumer side, they prefer that. So when we go to a midway and we use this P2P trading, we found that the price, the grid price or our electricity tariff vis-a-vis the P2P, the feed-in tariff is around 50% of our average tariff. And this P2P tariff, which was discovered, was somewhere between the feed-in tariff and the grid tariff. And with this, what happens that when the consumer needs power and he's generating power, a prosumer is actually maybe producing more power, so he can obviously trade on this P2P platform and sell within each other. And when there is no solar energy available during night times or in other times, the grid can obviously, the grid power can be utilized by them. So by using a mix of solar energy, embedded energy, as well as storage, we have also implemented storage projects. We find out that the consumer can have power 24/7, and they can get that power at a better price in terms of the renewable part. And for us as a utility, we also can meet our RP obligations and become cleaner and greener at the time. But yes, we must all know that whenever there is peak demand, we cannot always meet by the renewable resources. So at that time, we have to pump in more of non-conventional fuels to get that peak demand met. And the other challenges come during night time, because in this summer we had a peak which was very high during the night because of the abnormal temperature. The real field was around 52 degrees centigrade. So here, there, the sudden peak during the night time, right from 11 p.m. to around 2 a.m., is a huge surge of air conditioners which pick up. And during that time, obviously, there is no renewable solutions. It is only the grid which can supply. Maybe at some point of time when storage becomes more economical in terms of pricing and also in terms of footprint, I think they can be used with the solar power to store energy, and maybe at night time also the same power can be consumed, and the utility at the same time would not be investing on some kind of infrastructure cost which would be used for few hours and few days of the year. So we have tried out this project, and we feel that in future, when this kind of things can be scaled up, the utility can obviously become from a pure play vanilla utility, it can become a a DSO and a system aggregator, and by doing that, it ensures it can have a trading. This trading platform can be used, and it will ensure that renewable power and a mix of the grid power is used by the consumers for energy affordability, security, and transition. At the same time, it can also derive some margin as a non-tariff revenue for charging them for this trading platform. But it all needs the blessings of the regulator. So whenever it goes to the regulator and regulator approves it, this becomes a self-sustaining model. And this is all what I wanted to say. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Devashish, for the crisp remarks. Quickly, we will move to our next presenter. We have Mr. Raj Pratap Singh, former chairman of the Uttar Pradesh Electricity Regulatory Commission. Mr. Singh has had a diverse and distinguished 40-year career in public service at both the state and central government levels. He has served as the chairman of the UP regulator from 2018 to 2023, where he helped shape electricity regulations in the state of UP, focusing on fairness, efficient energy distribution, consumer protection, and the promotion of clean energy adoption. He has also served as senior advisor at the World Bank previously. Mr. Singh, you're welcome.
Thank you for giving this opportunity. Shashi, I'll request you to share my slide.
Sure, sir.
As we all know, the distributed solar energy and digitalization stands at the forefront of our decarbonization efforts. And though we have made substantial progress in solar capacity addition, however, the rooftop solar accounts not a very satisfactory share out of it. There are challenges for this, and one of the major challenges is that DISCOMs are reluctant to adopt rooftop solar due to its potential impact on their margin. On the other hand, the consumers are not very happy with the current arrangements such as gross metering and net billing because they are less attractive in comparison to the net metering. And also, the feed-in tariffs are not very remunerative to the consumers, which discourages their enthusiasm towards the rooftop solar. So when this, we are at a pivotal juncture when the cutting-edge technologies like peer-to-peer energy transaction and blockchain have converged, we thought of designing something which can attempt to solve this problem and create a win-win situation for all the stakeholders. Shashi, can you start with the first slide, please? The stakeholders are prosumers who have the solar rooftop installed in their premises at the rooftop primarily, and who generate behind the meter, and as and when they don't need the solar energy, they either feed into the grid or they can sell it to the consumers who are willing to buy it. And then there are consumers, obviously, they are connected with the distribution company's network, and they are willing to buy from the consumers as well as. We have, in our guidelines and regulations, we have provided for selection of a technology service provider who will be responsible for various technical support for setting up this blockchain-based P2P facility. And DISCOMs, because they are the distribution company and the licensee for dealing with the electricity in the country, they have to be a necessary party. The regulator's role is definitely there because he has to frame the regulations and design the tariff, etc. And last but not the least is the consumer forum, because any system has the potential of any dispute which has to be resolved, and the consumer forums are supposed to resolve these disputes. Next slide, please. This whole framework consists of guidelines and regulations, in which the guidelines and regulations tell what is to be done and by whom and in what manner. All these things have to be clearly spelled out. The technological aspects have to be defined. The commercial arrangements have to be elaborated, and accounting, billing, and settlement mechanism has to be worked out, and the dispute resolution has to be worked out. So these necessarily form the part of the regulatory framework which can take this P2P transactions forward. Next slide, please. As we all know, in India we have got 3 types of rooftop solar connection. The most popular being the net metering, where is a bidirectional arrangement whereby the energy is set off from the consumption, and the feed-in marginal tariff is the feed-in tariff. So people usually prefer this net metering because the effective feed-in tariff is higher than what the regulator normally allows for the gross metering or the net billing. The gross metering is a unidirectional arrangement where whatever is generated is fed into the distribution company system, and the regulator decides or determines a feed-in tariff. In case of UP, we have decided feed-in tariff to be whatever is the price discovered in the last year's solar power procurement plus 25% premium, which works out to be roughly 3 rupees 75 paisa. Net billing is something in between net metering and gross metering. Here again is a bidirectional arrangement where the import and export both are allowed, and here only instead of the settlement with the DISCOM is not done at the marginal tariff rate but at the feed-in tariff rate. So the most attractive being the net metering, but this is most resisted by the distribution companies, and gross metering is the least attractive to the consumers. So we try to design a system which can address and take care of all type of consumers. Then another aspect which has to be kept in mind while designing a regulatory framework is that the tariff has to be unbundled, and the regulator has to determine the unbundled tariff for all the consumer category wise and the feed-in tariff connection wise. It has to also determine the wheeling charges for the use of DISCOMs wire, open access charges, cross subsidy surcharge, and additional surcharge if at all has to be levied or not. Next slide, please. Then, as I mentioned, the technical service provider is to be responsible for providing the blockchain-based P2P technology platform, and has to also ensure the privacy and cyber security aspect. It has to create an app or a web platform for time slot wise, transactions. The prosumer and the consumers, they have to submit their injection and draw schedule and price offer and bid, etc. So first, these two are the primary responsibility of the technical service provider. Then there has to be a deviation mechanism for penalty from the whatever schedule is being adhered to. For example, if a prosumer says that from say 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. I'll inject X amount of energy at this price, and at the end actually he doesn't do that, either there is a overdraw or there is an underdraw, then we have to work out a penal mechanism so that he cannot game the system. And this makes the role of smart meter very, very necessary. Fortunately, in UP, we have got more than 1.5 million smart meters already installed. So we think, and all the new connections of the state are now mandatorily in form of smart meters. So this is a very helpful arrangement. The smart meter is a very helpful arrangement in furthering the cause of peer-to-peer energy transactions. And as has been already explained by Mr. Pillai, that this P2P interface has to be connected to the metering data management system of the billing, because the money cannot be transacted between the prosumer and the consumer directly. It has to go towards the DISCOM, because it's a license activity, and all the billing, credit or debit, is raised by the distribution company, and the distribution company works as a counterparty. It generates a periodic bill for the prosumer as well as the consumer, and this is how the system has been evolved. Next slide, please. Next slide. Now, unlike other states, we have made this type of connection and their applicability a bit different. Because net metering was resisted by the distribution company, we have kept net metering confined to the domestic and agricultural consumers only, because the reason being that their tariff is less than the average cost of supply. That means they are the subsidized category. So if they go out of the distribution company business, it doesn't affect the distribution company much, because in any case, it is being supplied at a subsidized cost. So that was the reason we kept domestic and agriculture only eligible for the net metering. And gross metering and net billing has been made available to all type of consumer depending upon their choice. And as I mentioned earlier, the feed-in tariff is applicable tariff of that particular consumer marginal tariff. And for other two category, it is 125% of the previous year's solar bid price, which has been discovered. Next slide, please. This is just to give a flavor at what are the tariffs. The domestic lower slab is rupee 550 paisa, and then highest is 650 currently. The agriculture is subsidized at 2 rupee per kilowatt hours, and the commercial and industrial consumers, they pay 9. These all are the rupee per kilowatt hour. That means 7.3 rupee to 9 rupee. These are the tariff which is prevalent. Next slide, please. And as I mentioned, that this is the composite sheet which explains what D1 stands for, the lowest category of consumer. D2
sorry, we're running a little late. If you could wrap up in a minute or so.
I'll just,
Thank you.
2 minutes. So this is the tariff. Next slide, please. So we have tried to explain that what is the trading opportunity created after even paying the charges to the distribution company and to the technical service provider. As Mr. Pillai had explained, 92 paisa is payable to the distribution company for towards the wheeling charges, and 42 paisa towards the technical service providers charges. Even after taking into account different type of consumer category transactions create these net trading opportunity. There are many possible scenarios. I have just tried to show some of them, and it goes up to as high as 55, 60 paisa, depend upon if you are net metering, then it is further high. Next slide, please. These are the advantages, just decentralization, efficiency, transparency, flexibility, optimization. Next slide. And creates an energy sharing community, incentivize the procedure, grid stability, resilience. These can be shared with the PowerPoint. Thank you. I'll be happy to answer any question if there are.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. Moving along, I think we have about 15 minutes left, we have two discussants who will give some quick remarks. First, we have Devabrata Chattopadhyay. He's a senior energy specialist currently working in the East Asia Pacific Energy team. Deb is a power system engineer and economist with significant experience on energy market design and analysis to address market operation, planning, and policy issues. Deb, over to you.
Thanks, Kabir, and hello, everyone. I'll probably get just 5 or 6 minutes to make some quick comments, mainly to connect the excellent presentation material with what we might be able to do as bank for our client countries. So, I mean, of course, India itself is a big example of what can be done, and that's very encouraging. I wanted to sort of just generalize like what factors we need to consider in choosing countries and sort of utilities within that. The first point actually is on the tariff level. I mean, as you can see, the from sort of Gemma's initial slide that the tariffs in the developed world has actually increased a lot, especially with high penetration of RE. Whereas most of our countries that we operate in as bank, they are still sort of under 10 cents. Like India, the domestic tariff is around 5 to 6 rupees, which is well under 10 cents. And then, you know, like, I mean, that actually limits the opportunity to actually introduce distributed energy source, because why would anybody want to install rooftop solar if they can get power for 6-7 cents? But then we have countries like Philippines where the tariff is around 12 pesos, I think, which is probably around 20 cents. So quite high. That's very high. Then Thailand is in the sort of 14-15 cents. Followed by Turkey, Vietnam, and they also meet the other important attribute that they already have at least significant pilots on smart meters. So you can actually pick a utility that already has smart meters. The tariff is such that a lot of customers may be interested in participating in sort of solar rooftops. And then we have a bit of a use case kind of ready to go. And this concept will need to be trialed a lot before we get anywhere in terms of the scale that's needed. That's kind of like, you know, like that's how we can go about selecting a few countries. And I'm sure like the other discussion, Katrina will talk about countries in Europe that are also good candidates. The other point I wanted to touch upon is making customers informed. So it's good to have rooftop solar, it's good to have smart meters, and if the tariff is right, it should happen. But then I think the customer awareness to participate in P2P will be extremely critical. So it's a little bit like Airbnb and Uber, which are also P2Ps in a different sector. Here, it's a more complicated commodity than hiring a hotel room or taxi because of its dynamic nature. So I'll very quickly share one slide if I could. So this is not working. So I'm okay without the slide. But what I was going to show is actually when we have prosumers or even regular customers without any solar or any other distributed resource, they actually have effectively a marginal cost of supply, very similar to what generators in the wholesale market do. So if we could actually equip our at least like the more informed segment of the customers with a tool that actually helps them to calculate what will be their marginal cost of supply during a typical day, working day, weekends, holidays, and so on. then they are actually much better placed to decide how much to buy and sell. Now, this sounds fancy, but it's actually very easy to do. It's a little bit like what the online solar rooftop calculators do, like to tell you how much solar rooftop you need. This is going a step further and just telling you, like, take the load from the smart meter, which takes only 15 seconds, and then actually do the calculation to show that you actually have during daytime quite a few hours where you have surplus solar, which is getting a very low feed-in tariff. Instead, you can sell it to your neighbor. So that sort of tool to go with the P2P platform will equip our customers very well so that they can participate in a much more fuller way without actually requiring much guidance. So I'll stop there, but I think just in terms of the main takeaways for me is that we do have pretty good client countries in East Asia. Thailand is actually asking for such service, and we have probably a very good case in Philippines as well. And then we should actually pay some attention to informing our customers, probably do some analytical work to come up with some online tools that can be used by customers. And then we, of course, have potential for doing P2P trading platforms, which can be, like applied at scale across a lot of our clients. And again, like Thailand, the regulator is already asking for a common product that can be adopted by multiple utilities. So a lot of exciting opportunities for us. Thank you. Back to you, Kabir.
Thanks a lot, Deb. Really interesting thoughts there. Next, we have Katharina Gassner, a senior energy economist currently working in the Eastern Europe and Central Asia team. Katharina is coordinating the activities of the World Bank Energy and Extractives team in the Western Balkans and is leading lending and technical assistance projects in the areas of clean energy transition, energy efficiency, and sustainable heating, amongst others. Welcome, Katharina.
Thank you, Kabir. So I will keep this remarkably short. I bring a completely different perspective from Europe and Central Asia, where I am based. The first feature to remember for this region is that it is very much influenced by the EU framework. A lot of our client countries there, they're already in the energy community, so although they're not EU member states per se, they are pledged to follow the common market principles that the EU has, and that is something that is very important in terms of explaining the evolution of the prosumer market and the P2P evolution that we see. I think it is fair to say that there has been a really rapid acceleration in that area in the past few years. So the clean energy package, which is in place since 2019, already created renewable energy communities. And these renewable energy communities, they were trading, so generating, selling, trading within their own community. This has been broadened in scope with the clean energy package just a couple of years later, where these renewable communities were changed into energy communities. And those energy communities, they go beyond renewable energy, and they go beyond the generation and the trading among members, can go outside their community structure. They can also do storage, they can do EV charging infrastructure, and so on. So this architecture was put in place, and I'm going to say a few words on the architecture in a moment, but I want to first say something about the scale of the ambition in the European Union. You might know that with the EU Green Deal, the continent is pledged for net zero by 2050. And that translates, and I'm just using one set of figures, different countries or different people have translated this differently, that by 2027, so in less than 5 years, every SME in the European Union would have to have rooftop solar. And by 2029, all households would need to have rooftop solar. in order to reach the 45% renewable target that is associated with that net zero pledge. So the scale of the ambition is remarkable, and it explains in part why the decentralized generation, the prosumer concept, and other concepts of so-called active consumers have very much moved to the forefront of late. This all has been supercharged by the invasion of Ukraine, which essentially now also puts the security of supply and the independence of energy supply to the front. So engaging citizens is now no longer just a matter of greening and climate and creating sort of like public acceptance of the green energy revolution, but it's very much seen as a matter of survival and energy independence. So what is the observation that I have in light of the excellent presentations that we've seen so far? First is that the EU architecture that had to be put in place stepwise in order to support these active consumers, such as the energy communities, is fairly elaborate. And it starts with legal obligations that go towards the rollout of smart meters across member states and obviously also among some of our client countries. It goes towards the creation of a very comprehensive legal and regulatory framework. I think previous speakers have touched on that already. It goes to elaborate decisions on the structure of charging, and there the difference between network charges and other charges has become much more important. There is a whole dimension of raising awareness and information where there is a centralized effort to make the opportunities presented by the new technologies more obvious to everyone. Then we have a whole debate on certificates of origin, which come hand in hand with trading regimes and harmonized systems which are applicable across member states are being put in place rather than the piecemeal approach that happened before. And finally, there is an obligation that will come in this continent for dynamic electricity price contracts, which essentially will allow a very fine fine identification of business opportunities and when to feed into the grid and so on. In this context, what do we see in our client countries? So in countries which might not be quite as developed as the member states, we see increasing interest in the concept of prosumers. And again, this actually has come not necessarily because of the climate consideration and the renewable energy consideration, but it has come really as a consequence of the fact that there was an energy crisis which made imports of electricity extremely expensive. And so countries suddenly looked at how can they boost their domestic production. And so we ended up doing quite a lot on cutting red tape and improving the economic conditions, for prosumers in our client countries. But what we also see is the emergence of these new technologies such as blockchain, which have been covered extensively. At the same time, there are still considerable barriers to this becoming a market that is self-evident. The infrastructure is missing, so smart meters are missing in a lot of our countries. So that's where the World Bank also engages at the distribution level. The regulations are incomplete and not sophisticated enough to do a lot of the things that could be done. The economics matter. Deb has touched on that in a lot of the countries where we work. I touched on high import prices, but generally we have very low electricity prices, and so the attractiveness, the financial attractiveness for rooftop solar feeding into the grid with any kind of technology is fairly low. So there's still a lot of work to be done, and I'm very impressed to see how much has already happened in India or in other countries that have been quoted, such as Thailand or the Philippines. But overall, I mean, it's excellent to see that there is so much rich material and experiences that can be exchanged. So I stop here. Thank you.
Thanks, Katerina. We're right on time with 1 minute left for Q&A. I think we had an ambitious agenda and a packed agenda, as we know. I think I will leave the speakers to maybe respond quickly to the points raised by the discussants. We have one question in the chat. I think people are still sort of digesting all the rich information that was shared. The question in the chat is for Katerina, but I'd throw it open to everyone for inputs if there are any. If you are knowledgeable of any P2P success stories in Europe or elsewhere that go beyond the piloting stage, and this is one of the things that probably also touches on the economics, the regulatory, and other aspects that have already been mentioned. So over to you, Reggie, and others to respond.
Thank you very much. Just replying to Devabrata on the first point he mentioned about the tariffs in most part of the developing countries where the bank is working, tariff is still kept low. The main reason is that their share of renewables have not gone to very high, 30%, 40%, it has not gone. And they are not experiencing the kind of difficulties which are experienced in countries where distributed solar or distributed renewables are growing fast. And also all those countries are, utilities are by and large owned by governments, or even in private, its regulated tariffs are very low. So that will change when we see that this is going increasing. As the renewable share increases, that perhaps they will be pushed to relook at it. So you talked about developing new analytical tools, and also you mentioned about a solar generation calculator, some tool. So we'll request you to share that with us. We'll see how best it could go with it could go with the P2P. Thank you. Back to you.
If there's any responses from Gemma, Devashi, Sharpi Singh.
So
after you.
No, go ahead. I was going to say that looking at the big opportunity in Europe and around the globe, Gemma has relocated from Australia temporarily to Switzerland, from where she can cover the whole globe.
With less mileage. I mean, I think that the energy communities legislation in Europe is quite interesting, but I would say its adoption has actually been quite slow. I mean, it was partly because of COVID. Like the Clean Energy Package Directive actually came from 2018, and the member states had until the end of 2020 to transpose that, and it was extended to like 2021 because of COVID. But the adoption, there's only about 2 million people in energy communities in Europe, and most of them are very small. And so I think that the model, the transposition of it in the member states is all very different. And the place where you've got the most traction is in Germany, where there's more of these associations, these kind of community associations established there that can spearhead the establishment of these energy communities. So I think that that's just one thing to say about, it feels like there might be a lot more going on in Europe, but I wouldn't. At the regulatory level, I would say yes, but at the activity level, I think it's a bit inconsistent. And then the comment around, well, we've got lower price of electricity in certain places, so this is not necessarily a suitable model. Well, I think that where you've got lower cost of electricity, you want to keep it low. And if the intention is to incorporate more energy into the system and it's from renewable sources, you would want to do that in the most efficient way possible. And the model, that has been adopted in many high-income OECD countries has these kind of unintended consequences of, price inflation from the reasons I mentioned in my presentation. And I think why India has really, I think there's much more sensitivity to price in a place like India. It's far less acceptable for the electricity to go up, 30%, let alone, hundreds of percentage points, which it has done in many other places. So I think that the large scale of it, and in many of the other countries that the World Bank will be working in, where you have government-owned utilities, which are vertically integrated, this actually lends itself perfectly to the establishment of local energy markets, where there isn't a lot of deregulation yet, because you've got effectively one counterparty who has aligned interests with what the government wants to do, and it's far easier to coordinate the one organisation. And I think that's why, the work that I'm sorry, my 3-year-old has just come into the room. Mom, can you open this? Yes, I can open this. Which is why oh, this is Alfie. I think, which is why RP Singh, in coordinating with UPPCL, was able to make the rapid progress that he did in engaging with the key stakeholders, because there just simply weren't as many to liaise with. So I think the clients and the jurisdictions that the World Bank is operating in, I think, are actually very good locations to look for our market mechanisms. So they are creating markets similar to, they're just more refined, they're more localized, they're more fine-grained. That would be my other point.
I have 2 points to share. See, we feel that solar rooftop penetration is not worth it because the cost of installing a solar rooftop and the returns vis-a-vis the capex and opex are not very balanced. So when we merge this concept of installing a solar rooftop, and a consumer or a prosumer will know whether it's a CNI or whether it's a residential, that they can earn money, in margins, and when they can trade during these hours when other people need power, I think that can help them, offset the cost of solar capex or opex. That's one point. So that concept has to be built as solar rooftop proliferation along with the blockchain kind of for P2P trading. The second is what I feel that as the climate action agenda is kicking in for India, is becoming very strong, both for not only for the power industry, but also for the industry and the buildings per se. And they will have to, the CNI consumers will have to, go for green energy more and more. And obviously they are talking about green hydrogen. And when that comes up, they would need solar, actually more of solar, to get that green hydrogen from the green source of solar, right? Okay, that's how you will get green hydrogen and the electrolysis and the hard to abate sectors in steel, cement and all. So I think it's going to come up more and more, and India is going to have a pretty large opportunity both in terms of CNI as well as residential customers in getting this blockchain. Actually, it should be approved by the regulator, and this market will play for itself and will find its own position so that it will take off whenever these benefits are being juxtapositioned along with the obligations for the sectors of CNI. That's all.
Can I come in? I have just 1 or 2 very small points. First of all, it has to be country specific, of course, because solar is not available everywhere in abundance. It makes some sense to invest in solar where the costs are, encouraging or attractive. But while we consider the cost of solar generation, let us be mindful that if we are generating at a rooftop, its cost is going to be significantly less than what is generated at a distant location, because you have to, once it is going into the grid, you need to have the balancing cost, which is significant. You need to have ancillary services. You need to have some transmission cost, because that transmission line which is for that evacuation is not going to be utilized for the full 24 hours. So if you add all those costs, they become significantly higher, number one. That is from the supplies. From the demand side, with the CBAM coming into force, those who are in the CNI, they cannot wish away the green power. And it is that is what is going to make the difference, that all the consumers in the CNI segment, they have to prepare themselves for the CBAM framework. Otherwise, their survival will be very, very difficult. So I thought these 2 points one must keep in mind while deciding. Thank you.
Many thanks for the response. I see we have one more question. We do need to close now. I think most of our colleagues are logging off for other meetings. Sandeep, do you want to just come in and quickly ask your question? And then we close after that.
Sure. Thank you so much, Kabir, for allowing me. I will not take too much time. I just quickly wanted to ask Debashish, in his sort of experience in Bengal, what is kind of with the coming in of these type of P2P platforms and so forth, and more solar rooftops coming on even
No, they see overall, if I talk on, I would not only talk on Bengal, but I'll talk on India, because if you see the PLF of the coal plants, which used to be at one point of time at about 100, I've been in Mumbai before. We had a plant in Dahanu which was 105. Okay, right now I don't know, it operates maybe at 75 or 65. We have plants in Calcutta of ourselves, Bajaj and here, which was operating much higher, 1995, it has gone down already, 85, 84. I'm sure that in other places also it's going down to 65, correct? So the PLF of these plants will go down, and in that place they have the renewable general RGOs. The generation also will have obligations to build a renewable and cut off the part of the fossil. So more of the policy interventions would come in to fill up the gap of reduction in fossil. But the very fact is we need to have a balance of both, as I said, for the energy trilemma, that is energy affordability, that you need the green power at the cost of a brown power, right? And you need energy security. So when you need power, the power has to be there, the sun is not there or the wind is not blowing, correct? And you need the energy transition. So these balance has to come in, and somebody will have to pay for all these technologies, which is coming in. You call it green hydrogen, green ammonia, you call it now obviously solar things have come in. And as Jemma was saying, the levelized tariff is not the cost of power. There's a huge transmission cost, there's a huge distribution cost. And those costs are for the intermittent power. This is not a constant power, right? So hence, I think this will be a transition mode, and maybe in next 3-4 years time, the renewable part will go up as high as at least 26 to 27% of meeting the demand, which is now maybe around 80-90% made by fossil fuel because of the peaking load, correct? And obviously, there is going to be transfer of energy from one place to other. But what my major point was, there is no point in investing in infrastructure cost, which will carry that power for a minimum hours and few days. The ROI is not justified. So more of embedded generation would be a little more helpful in reducing the cost, not only for the utilities, but even for the consumers to apply. That's all.
Thank you, Debashish. Yeah, no, you answered my question, and we'll deal with it later, perhaps offline. But thank you, Kabir, and to everyone for offering this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Sandeep. Thanks so much, everyone. We are flush out of time. It's been a really rich, engaging discussion. I mean, I don't even know if 2 hours would have been enough, frankly. Maybe we should have planned better. But it leaves a lot of things to pick up for next time, whether it's the regulations, whether it's how consumers sort of engage and respond, whether it's the discussion around non-wires alternatives and the economics around that. Lots of interesting strands here. We really look forward to building on this and really figuring out, as Deb and Katarina were also saying, in terms of how we can take this to our client countries and think about how this can benefit their goals and aspirations. So with that, thanks again to everyone. Thanks for staying on. Sorry for running over time, but I'm glad whoever stayed was able to stay. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you
Good
very
day, good evening, good night.